For the rest, I've trusted my memory with a little help from my family. So step into the Wayback Machine with me as we travel through one lucky guy's life experience. Chapter 1. Circulation 3. As a boy, I never considered myself unusual. Yet, instead of delivering newspapers, I had a TV guide route. My father read 2 newspapers a day, but I never got into that habit, preferring to devour his weekly edition of Variety. I couldn't hit or throw a baseball, but I devised my own comic strip. At 12, I received rejection slips for my gag cartoons from the Saturday Evening Post and the New Yorker. I guess I wasn't usual after all. The first movie image I clearly remember is the last scene of Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was reissued to theaters in 1955, when I was 4. Movies were shown on a continuous basis in those days, so the minute a throng of parents dragged their kids out of the theater, my mother took me by the hand and led me inside, before the current showing was over. That's why the first image burned in my brain is the final shot of Walt Disney's film, with Prince Charming leading Snow White toward a gleaming golden sun. I'm pretty sure that took place at the Guild Theater, the Art Deco movie house that stood, as a seeming afterthought, behind Radio City Music Hall on 50th Street in Manhattan. Several years later, my parents took me back to the Guild to see Robert Youngston's 1958 compilation feature, The Golden Age of Comedy. There was a life-size standee of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy with Jean Harlow outside the theater, and it made a vivid impression on me, almost as vivid as the hilarious silent comedy excerpts I got to see on the big screen. I was hooked, to put it mildly. Years later, I got to know Bob Youngston and had the opportunity to thank him for making such a difference in my life. I became obsessed with silent comedy, which even turned up as kiddie show fodder on television in those days. In 1959, Charlie Chaplin reissued his feature-length films, and I got to see Modern Times on a theater screen. It was a time of great discovery for me. I also acquired my first home movie projector as a birthday present. It cost $9.99 and was advertised in a mail-order catalog as being battery-operated. In fact, only its tiny bulb used a battery. To make the pictures move, you had to turn a metal crank, which made a terrible racket. This proved to be an early lesson in false advertising. Eventually, I got permission to use my parents' Bell & Howell projector, which they had acquired to screen our family home movies. From that point on, I saved my money to purchase 8mm editions of vintage films with Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Laurel and Hardy, and other giants of the silent era. I needed no persuasion to show them on any and all occasions. They also spurred me to try making my own silent shorts with a group of friends when we were in junior high school. This taught me an important lesson about how hard it is to create comedy, even if you have a supply of cream pies on hand. I was born in Manhattan. That gives me a lifelong right to call myself a native New Yorker. The hospital where I was born is now a condo apartment building on West 49th Street. We left the city when I was 4, but I clearly remember living in our apartment house on West 77th Street just off Amsterdam Avenue. There was a friendly neighborhood fruit vendor named Dominic, whose apples came in fancy tissue paper. I also recall that one of the grocery stores we frequented on Broadway was a former movie theater, which I found confusing because it retained its marquee out front. I always hoped we were going to the movies when, as often as not, we were just going shopping for dinner. Our first boxy console television set had slots on both sides of the wooden cabinet to allow sound to emerge from its cloth-covered speakers. It reminded me of a piggy bank, and I would drop coins into the slots from time to time, occasionally causing minor havoc with the set. One of my earliest memories is of an Indian head test pattern, which I later learned was the only thing available to watch on TV until Howdy Doody signed on every weekday afternoon. I never sat in that show's famed peanut gallery, but I did get to visit backstage with a local New York TV personality, the Merry Mailman, who was portrayed by genial Ray Heatherton. It turns out that Ray was my father's first client when he started practicing law, so that gave us an in. Ray's daughter Joey later made a splash as a sex-kittenish musical performer.